I was halfway through a night patrol when dispatch told me to turn around. Not suggested, not advised. Ordered. Unit 14, confirm your location. The radio crackled so loudly, it made me pull the mic away from my mouth. I glanced through the windshield at the empty highway stretching ahead of me, black asphalt cutting through endless forest. County Route 9, I answered, about 10 miles east of Blackwater. Silence followed. Not normal radio silence either, not static, not interference. Just nothing. Then dispatch came back, calmer this time. Unit 14, turn your vehicle around immediately. I frowned. Dispatch, I'm responding to the stranded motorist call. Another pause. Then, turn around immediately. No explanation, no urgency in her voice. That was the part that bothered me most. She sounded rehearsed, like she'd said those exact words before. I checked my GPS. The screen was blank. Not loading, not frozen. Blank. You serious? I asked. I'm almost there. Unit 14, dispatch repeated. You need to turn around now. Something about the way she said now made my stomach tighten. But I kept driving. At the time, I honestly thought somebody in dispatch had screwed up coordinates or mixed up roads. It happens more than people think, especially out in the rural parts of the state where half the roads don't even show up properly on maps. Still, after another mile or so, I started noticing things that didn't feel right. No mile markers. No reflectors. No deer crossing signs. Nothing. Just road and trees. The forest pressed tightly against both sides of the highway, dense enough to swallow the moonlight. My headlights barely reached beyond the first line of trunks. And then I noticed the headlights ahead of me. Far in the distance, a vehicle facing my direction. I remember feeling relieved at first. Finally, I thought, the stranded driver. But after another few minutes, the lights never got closer. That's when I realized something impossible. I'd been driving toward that car for miles, and it hadn't moved an inch. That was the moment I finally started feeling afraid. Before all this happened, I'd been a highway patrol officer for almost 6 years. Most people think highway patrol is nonstop action. High-speed chases, shootouts, drug busts. Truth is, especially out in the rural counties, the job is mostly boredom wrapped in darkness. You spend hours driving empty roads with the radio low and one eye on the speedometer. Most nights, the biggest excitement is pulling over a drunk farmer in a pickup truck or helping somebody change a tire in freezing rain. That was my life for 6 years. Night shift, county highways, forest roads. The kind of places where gas stations close before midnight and entire towns disappear after dark. I actually liked it. There's something peaceful about empty roads at 2 in the morning. Your headlights become your whole world, just asphalt stretching endlessly ahead while fields and forests slide past your windows like black oceans. After a while, you learn every inch of your patrol area. Every sharp curve. Every dead-end road. Every place teenagers park to drink beer. Every stretch where deer like to jump out and ruin somebody's life. You memorize it all without realizing it. That's why what happened to me doesn't make sense. Because I knew those roads. All of them. Or at least I thought I did. There was one road older officers never talked about directly, not seriously anyway. Sometimes it came up in fragments during late-night shifts, usually around 3 in the morning, when everybody was exhausted enough to let things slip. An older deputy might mention a vehicle found abandoned somewhere deep in the county. Another officer would immediately change the subject. Once during my second year, I asked Sergeant Morrow about it while we were grabbing coffee at a truck stop. "You ever patrol Route 9?" I asked. The question hit the table like a gunshot. Morrow stopped stirring his coffee. Another deputy actually looked up from his phone. Nobody answered for a few seconds. Then Morrow chuckled, but it sounded forced. "That road isn't on your route." I laughed a little. "Okay, but where is it?" He took a sip of coffee before answering. "Far enough away." That was it. No explanation. And after that, I started noticing things. Whenever Route 9 appeared on paperwork, older officers handled it themselves. Whenever dispatch mentioned calls near Blackwater Forest, rookies suddenly got reassigned elsewhere. Once I even saw a map hanging in dispatch, with a section physically cut out of it. Not marked over. Cut out. Like someone didn't want that area seen at all. I asked dispatch about it once. The woman behind the desk just said, "You ask too many questions." Then she smiled. But it wasn't a real smile. That was the thing about everyone in the department. They all acted like they knew something they'd agreed never to say out loud. And if you stayed in patrol long enough, you learned not to push. Cops survive by respecting patterns. If experienced officers avoid something, there's usually a reason. Still, curiosity gets to you eventually. Especially on night shifts. Especially when you're tired. A few weeks before the incident, I was parked outside an abandoned grain silo finishing paperwork when another patrol unit rolled in beside me. Officer Grady, 23 years on the force. Never rattled, never emotional. He stepped out smoking a cigarette and leaned against my cruiser. "You ever hear dispatch send units to Route 9? He asked suddenly. I looked up from my clipboard. "Once or twice." Grady nodded slowly toward the darkness beyond the fields. "Here's some advice," he said. "If dispatch ever tells you to turn around." He stopped there. "What?" I asked. He stared out into the dark for a long moment before answering. "Just do it." Then he crushed the cigarette under his boot, got back in his cruiser and drove away. At the time, I thought he was messing with me. A creepy story for the rookie night patrol officer. I didn't understand he was trying to warn me. And a month later, on a cold stretch of empty highway surrounded by endless forest, I finally heard dispatch say those words for myself. Most police stations get strange after midnight. The phones slow down. The fluorescent lights start buzzing louder. Everybody gets tired enough to stop pretending they're normal human beings. That's when stories come out. Not ghost stories exactly. Worse, real stories. The kind people only tell halfway. I first heard them talking about the road during a stormy night shift sometime around my 4th year on patrol. Heavy rain hammered the station windows, while 3 of us sat around the front desk drowning ourselves in stale coffee. Deputy Hale was complaining about road closures near Blackwater County when Sergeant Morrow interrupted him. "Could be worse," Morrow muttered. "At least they didn't send you to the old highway." The room went quiet for a second. Hale snorted into his coffee. "Hell with that." Another officer laughed nervously. "The bypass," he said, "road we don't drive." Everybody chuckled after that, but the laughter sounded forced, like they were following rules in a conversation none of them wanted to continue. I looked up from my paperwork. "What road?" Nobody answered immediately. Morrow rubbed his jaw and stared toward the rain-soaked windows. "You know the stretch near Blackwater Forest?" he asked finally. "Route 9. That got another silence. Then Hale pointed at me. "See, rookie already knows too much." "I'm not a rookie anymore," I said. "On that road you are." Again, nervous laughter. I remember getting irritated more than anything else. Cops love acting mysterious around younger officers. Half the job is old-timers trying to scare newer guys with stories about haunted houses or cartel execution sites. But this felt different. Nobody was smiling naturally. Nobody seemed comfortable. And every single time the conversation drifted toward that highway, somebody changed the subject. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled old county maps from records and spread them across my desk. Route 9 absolutely existed. Long stretch of isolated highway running through Blackwater Forest before connecting to older county roads farther east. Nothing unusual on paper. But then I checked patrol assignments. That's when things got strange. No active patrol routes included that road. Not one. State troopers covered highways around it. County deputies handled roads leading toward it. But Route 9 itself was basically empty. Like law enforcement had drawn an invisible circle around the area. I dug deeper. Accident reports near Blackwater kept getting transferred to neighboring departments. Missing vehicle reports vanished into administrative archives. One file described a stranded motorist call that ended with 3 responding officers requesting immediate psychiatric leave afterward. No details included, just signatures, and every report had sections blacked out. I brought it up to Officer Grady one night while we sat outside a gas station watching trucks pass on the interstate. "You ever notice nobody patrols Route 9? I asked. Grady kept staring through the windshield. "Yep." "Why?" "Because nobody wants to." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." I laughed a little. "Come on, seriously, what happened out there?" Grady finally looked at me. Tired eyes, completely serious. "You know what's funny?" he said quietly. "Everybody thinks cops are brave because we deal with killers and wrecks and dead bodies." He shook his head slowly. "But there are things out there that don't fit reports, things you can't arrest, things that make experienced officers quit without warning." The humor drained out of me. "What's on that road?" Grady looked away again. "Don't know," he admitted. "Nobody does." Rain tapped softly against the cruiser windows. Then he added something that stayed with me afterward. "There's a reason dispatch has protocols for that highway." Protocols? If a unit reports being on Route 9 after midnight, dispatch tells them to turn around immediately. I frowned. "And if they do?" Grady went silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "They usually don't ask twice." I waited for him to explain. He never did. Instead, he opened the cruiser door and stepped out into the cold night air. Before shutting the door, he looked back at me one last time. "If dispatch ever tells you to turn around on that road," he said, "do it." A week later, dispatch accidentally sent me there. The first time I drove Route 9, it was raining hard enough to erase the world beyond my windshield. Not normal rain either. The kind that floods roads, rattles your cruiser, and turns forests into black walls moving in the dark. I was about an hour from ending my shift when dispatch sent out the call. "Disabled vehicle reported east of Blackwater County. Possible stranded motorist." I grabbed the assignment before anybody else answered, mostly because I wanted something to do besides sit in a parking lot drinking burnt coffee until sunrise. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The GPS pulled me off the interstate and onto smaller county roads, familiar farmland, empty gas stations, long fences stretching across soaked fields. Then the roads narrowed. The streetlights disappeared first. Then the reflective markers. Then even the occasional farmhouse lights vanished behind the rain. I remember checking my fuel gauge for some reason. I still don't know why. The GPS voice calmly instructed me to continue straight. 10 minutes later, I passed an old rusted road sign half hidden by trees. Route 9. My stomach tightened immediately. It sounds stupid now, but I actually laughed to myself when I saw it. Nervous laughter, the kind you use when your brain wants to deny something uncomfortable. "No way," I muttered. I almost turned around right there. But then I thought about how ridiculous that would sound. Experienced highway patrol officer scared of a road because of station gossip. So I kept driving. The moment I crossed onto Route 9, everything changed. The rain seemed quieter somehow. Not lighter, just muffled, like the sound was being swallowed by the forest. The road stretched endlessly ahead between dense trees on both sides. No intersections, no mailboxes, no power lines. Nothing, just wet asphalt vanishing into darkness. And no traffic. That was the strangest part. Even isolated county roads usually have something. A trucker, a late-night driver, headlights passing in the distance. Route 9 had nothing alive on it except me. I checked the clock. 1:13 a.m. The farther I drove, the worse the feeling became. Not fear exactly. More like pressure. Like the road itself didn't want me there. I rolled my window down at one point, expecting to hear rain and wind through the trees. Instead, I heard almost nothing. No insects. No frogs. No movement. Just my engine. Then dispatch crackled over the radio. Unit 14, confirm location. Something about the dispatcher's voice sounded tense. Route 9, I answered, about 5 miles eastbound. Silence. Then static. Then nothing. I tapped the radio, dispatch. No response. A few seconds later, the GPS screen went black. Completely black. I frowned and smacked it lightly with my palm. Dead. At the exact same moment, I saw headlights ahead through the rain. Parked on the shoulder. I slowed carefully as I approached. Dark-colored sedan, older model, driver's side door closed, headlights still on. But the engine wasn't running. I parked behind it and activated my light bar. Red and blue flashes spilled across the wet road and trees, but the forest seemed to absorb the light instead of reflecting it. That bothered me more than it should have. I stepped out into the rain. Immediately, the silence hit me again. No wind. No wildlife. Just water striking pavement. My flashlight beam swept across the sedan. No visible damage. No plate registered through dispatch because the radio had gone dead again. I approached the driver's side window slowly. Empty. No driver. No passenger. But when I placed my hand against the hood, the metal was still warm. Whoever had been driving that car hadn't left long ago. Highway patrol, I shouted into the darkness. Nothing answered. I swept my flashlight toward the tree line. Dense forest stood inches beyond the shoulder, thick enough to hide anything. For one brief second, I thought I saw movement between the trees. A figure, tall, standing perfectly still. Then lightning flashed overhead, and the woods were empty again. My radio suddenly exploded with static, so loud it made me jump. Then dispatch finally came through. Unit 14. The dispatcher sounded pale somehow, terrified. Return to your vehicle immediately. I stared toward the forest. What about the driver? Another burst of static. Then, leave the vehicle and exit Route 9 immediately. That was the first time dispatch ever told me to turn around. I got back into my cruiser faster than I want to admit. Rainwater dripped from my uniform while I slammed the door shut and grabbed the radio microphone. Dispatch vehicle abandoned. No sign of the driver. Static crackled loudly through the speaker. Then the dispatcher asked a question that immediately made my chest tighten. Unit 14, are you on Old Highway 47? Not Route 9. Not Blackwater Road. Old Highway 47. Like she didn't even want to use the real name. I looked through the windshield at the endless dark road ahead. Yeah, I answered slowly. Route 9, why? The silence afterward lasted too long. Then her voice came back completely different. Tighter, controlled, like somebody trying not to panic. Return to the interstate immediately. I frowned. What? Turn your vehicle around and return to the interstate. I looked back toward the abandoned sedan through my side mirror. Red and blue emergency lights flashed across wet pavement and empty trees. Dispatch, there's still a missing driver out here. Leave the vehicle. What's going on? Another pause. Then quieter this time. You need to leave right now. I'd heard fear in dispatchers before. Big wrecks, officer down calls, active shooters. This sounded different. Not adrenaline. Dread. The kind that settles into somebody slowly over years. I tightened my grip on the radio mic. Dispatch, if there's danger out here, I need details. No answer. Animal attack, armed suspect, what? Static hissed through the speaker again. Then, Unit 14, do not stop again on that road. The way she emphasized that road made my stomach twist. I glanced back toward the sedan once more. Still sitting there. Headlights glowing weakly through rain. No movement. No driver. I shifted the cruiser into drive and began making a careful three-point turn on the narrow highway. That's when my headlights swept farther down the road, and I saw the sedan again. I froze. The abandoned car was now nearly half a mile ahead of me. Same headlights, same dark body, parked on the shoulder facing the same direction. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I actually turned around in my seat to look behind me. The original location was empty. No tire tracks. No movement. Nothing. My pulse started hammering hard enough to make my vision blur slightly. There was no way the car could have passed me. Not without me seeing it. Not on a road this empty. I grabbed the radio again. Dispatch. My voice sounded smaller than usual. There's another vehicle farther eastbound. The dispatcher answered immediately. Do not approach it. I stared through the windshield. Rain poured across the glass, while the sedan sat motionless in the distance. Dispatch, I think it's the same car. Silence. Then, leave the road now. Something inside me finally listened. I hit the accelerator. The cruiser surged forward, tires hissing against wet pavement as I drove westbound toward the interstate. My headlights shook slightly from my hands, gripping the wheel too tightly. I kept checking the rearview mirror. Every few seconds. I don't know what I expected to see. The sedan following me maybe. Or someone standing in the road. Instead, the highway remained empty behind me. But the feeling never left. That pressure, like something was watching from the trees just outside the headlights. I drove for nearly 15 minutes before seeing the first road sign again. Then reflectors. Then power lines. The world slowly became normal. By the time I reached the interstate ramp, the radio static finally cleared. Dispatch spoke carefully. You clear of Route 9? Yeah, I said. What the hell was that? Another silence. Then, return to station. That's it. Yes. I almost argued. But something about the dispatcher's tone stopped me. Not authority. Exhaustion. like she'd had this conversation before. Back at the station, nobody wanted to look at me. Seriously, the moment I walked inside soaked from the rain, conversation stopped. Officer Grady stared at me from across the room for several seconds before standing up slowly. "You went out there," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Grady rubbed his face with one hand and sighed heavily. Then he said something I still think about almost every day. "That road moves things," he muttered. The station went completely silent. And for the first time since joining Highway Patrol, one of the veteran officers finally started explaining the rumors. Nobody joked after I came back from Route 9. That was the first thing I noticed. Usually the station never shuts up. Somebody's always complaining about paperwork or making fun of rookies or arguing over football scores. That night, the room felt like a funeral home. Rain still hammered the windows while I stood beside the coffee machine, trying to process what I'd seen. Officer Grady finally motioned me toward the back office. "Sit down," he said. The moment the door shut behind us, he locked it. That didn't help my nerves. Grady lowered himself into the chair across from me and stayed quiet for a few seconds before speaking. "You saw something move out there, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "The abandoned car," I said. "It changed positions." Grady didn't look surprised. That's usually how it starts. I stared at him. "What does that mean?" He leaned back heavily in his chair. "For years," he said quietly, "people have reported strange things on that road." Outside, thunder rattled the station windows. Grady continued staring at the desk while he spoke. "Drivers claim the highway stretches longer than it should. Some say they drive for hours without reaching the interstate. Others report seeing the same landmarks over and over again." "That's impossible." "Yeah," he replied, "that's what everybody says." He opened a drawer and pulled out a thin manila folder. No labels. No case number. Just loose reports inside. "Officially," he said, "none of this exists." He slid one report across the desk toward me. The statement came from a truck driver, dated almost 12 years earlier. Claimed he'd been trapped on Route 9 for nearly 6 hours despite driving straight the entire time. Said the trees never changed. Said he passed the same abandoned gas station 3 different times. Eventually, he crashed his truck trying to force through the forest. Police found him wandering the woods 2 days later, dehydrated and half-conscious. I looked up. "You actually believe this stuff?" Grady gave a tired shrug. "I believe enough not to drive there." Another report described a family of 3 disappearing after calling roadside assistance near Blackwater Forest. Their SUV was later discovered parked perfectly on the shoulder. Doors closed. Engine still running. Phones and wallets inside. No sign of the family. No footprints either. Just an empty vehicle sitting, alone in the dark. I flipped through more reports. Missing hikers. Abandoned patrol cars. Drivers claiming voices spoke to them through dead radios. None of the files were complete. Entire pages had been removed. "Why cover this up?" I asked. Grady laughed quietly. "How exactly would you explain it publicly?" I didn't answer. Because he was right. How do you report a road that behaves impossibly? How do you explain people vanishing from sealed vehicles? You can't. So instead, the department adapted. Quietly, unofficially. Night patrol routes were changed years ago. Dispatch rerouted emergency calls away from Blackwater whenever possible. State police stopped responding to stranded motorist reports on Route 9 after midnight unless absolutely necessary. "And if there's a real emergency?" I asked. Grady looked at me carefully. We wait until daylight. The rain outside seemed louder suddenly. I thought about the abandoned sedan, sitting alone on that highway. Warm hood. No driver. Has anyone actually disappeared out there? I asked. Grady's face changed immediately. That was the first time during the conversation. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. There was an officer, he said slowly. The room felt colder. About 9 years ago, Patrolman Lewis. I waited. He responded to a stranded motorist call around 2 in the morning. Dispatch lost radio contact after he confirmed entering Route 9. What happened? Grady rubbed his jaw. His cruiser was found 3 days later. Empty. He nodded once. Engine still running, driver door open, spotlight still aimed into the woods. A knot formed in my stomach. No body. Nothing. I looked down at the reports scattered across the desk. So what, you think the road killed him? Grady stared toward the dark office window. No, he said quietly. That would make more sense. Thunder rolled outside again. For a while neither of us spoke. Then Grady gathered the files back together and slid them into the folder. Forget about Route 9, he said. That's what smart officers do. Maybe I should have listened. Instead, over the next few days, I became obsessed with that road. And eventually, against every warning I'd been given, I decided to go back. Curiosity is dangerous in police work. That sounds stupid, but it's true. Most officers survive long careers by learning when not to dig deeper. You answer the call, write the report, and move on. The second you start chasing every strange thing you see, the job eats you alive. I understood that. I just ignored it. 3 nights after my conversation with Grady, I drove back to Route 9 intentionally. I told dispatch I was checking storm damage near Blackwater County. Nobody questioned it. Either they believed me, or they knew exactly what I was doing and didn't want to say it out loud. Around 12:40 a.m., I crossed onto the highway again. Immediately, the silence returned. No traffic. No wildlife. Nothing except my cruiser engine and endless trees, swallowing the edges of my headlights. This time I kept checking landmarks carefully. Mile markers. Guardrails. Road signs. I wanted proof the stories were nonsense. For the first 10 minutes, everything looked normal enough. Empty road, wet pavement, thick forest pressing close on both sides. Then I passed a bent road sign, leaning halfway into the ditch. BLACKWATER, 18 miles. The metal was rusted badly. One corner twisted inward like something had struck it years ago. I remember it clearly because the sign looked oddly familiar. About 7 minutes later, I passed it again. Same rust. Same bent corner. Same ditch. I slowed immediately. No, I muttered. I checked my mirrors. No intersections behind me. No turns. Just endless highway. My pulse started climbing. I grabbed the radio mic. Dispatch confirmed my location. Only static answered. I kept driving. 5 minutes later, the sign appeared a third time. This time, I stopped the cruiser completely. Rain drizzled softly across the windshield, while my headlights illuminated the crooked sign ahead. BLACKWATER, 18 miles. Impossible. I opened the GPS app on my phone. The map showed a perfectly straight stretch of highway. According to the screen, I was moving normally eastbound. But outside the cruiser windows, the world kept repeating itself. That was when real fear started setting in. Not nervousness. Not anxiety. Fear. The kind that crawls slowly into your chest and stays there. I turned the cruiser around immediately and accelerated westbound. The sign appeared again 10 minutes later. Still 18 miles away. Still bent the same way. I actually started laughing then. Short panicked bursts I couldn't control. Because my brain kept trying to force logic onto something that clearly didn't follow logic anymore. I hit the gas harder. The cruiser surged down the highway while trees blurred past in the darkness. Then headlights appeared ahead. Finally, another vehicle. Relief hit me so fast it almost hurt. I flashed my high beams repeatedly. The approaching vehicle did the same. Police strobes suddenly reflected through the rain. Another patrol car. State Highway Patrol. I nearly cried from relief. I slowed while the other cruiser approached from the opposite lane. Then my headlights illuminated the unit number. 14. My unit number. My stomach dropped so violently, I thought I might throw up. The approaching cruiser was identical to mine. Same push bar. Same spotlight. Same dent near the rear bumper from when I backed into a fence 6 months earlier. And behind the windshield. Me. I caught only a brief glimpse. A pale face gripping the steering wheel tightly. Wide, terrified eyes staring directly at me. Then both cruisers passed each other. The moment they crossed, every light inside my vehicle died. Headlights, dashboard, radio, everything. Darkness swallowed the cruiser instantly. I jerked the wheel hard in panic as the vehicle drifted toward the shoulder. Tires hit gravel violently before I managed to stop. For several seconds, I just sat there breathing hard in total darkness. Then slowly, the radio crackled back to life. Not dispatch. My own voice. Turn around. Static hissed loudly. Then again. Turn around now. I dropped the radio microphone like it had burned me. Outside, another set of headlights appeared far behind the cruiser. Approaching slowly. I didn't wait to see what was driving them. I slammed the cruiser into drive and floored the accelerator. The road twisted endlessly ahead, while the approaching headlights stayed visible in my rearview mirror the entire time. No matter how fast I drove, they never fell behind. And then something stepped out of the trees. I don't remember deciding to turn around. 1 second I was staring at the impossible sight of my own patrol car, approaching through the darkness. The next, instinct had taken over. My tires screamed against the pavement as I jerked the wheel hard and accelerated back the way I'd come. Or at least what I thought was the way I'd come. The road looked wrong now. Longer, narrower somehow. The trees leaned inward over the asphalt like they were listening. Behind me, headlights appeared again. Not flashing police lights. Just ordinary headlights. Low beams cutting through the dark. I checked the rearview mirror. The abandoned sedan. The same one from earlier. Only now there was someone sitting inside. My chest tightened immediately. The figure sat perfectly still behind the steering wheel. No movement. No blinking lights. No turn signal. Just a dark silhouette staring forward through the windshield. I couldn't see the face. At first, I thought the windows were tinted. Then I realized something worse. The interior of the car was too dark. Not shadowed. Dark. Like the headlights illuminated everything except whatever sat inside. I slowed without meaning to. The sedan sat on the shoulder exactly like before. Engine supposedly off. Headlights still burning. But this time, the driver's hands rested visibly on the wheel. Long fingers. Too long. My radio crackled suddenly. Unit 14. The dispatcher's voice sounded distorted. Buried under static. Turn around immediately. I grabbed the radio mic. I already turned around, I snapped. There's someone sitting in that vehicle now. Static hissed loudly. Then, Unit 14, turn around immediately. Same tone. Same wording. Exactly the same. Like a recording. I glanced back toward the sedan. The figure hadn't moved. But something felt different. Wrong. Then I realized why. The car was closer. I never saw it move. I swear to God I didn't. One moment it sat 50 yards behind me. The next it was maybe 30. Still parked. Still silent. Still impossible. Cold sweat rolled down my neck. Dispatch, I said carefully, is somebody else on this road with me? The radio shrieked, with static hard enough to make me pull it away from my ear. Then the dispatcher spoke again. Faster this time. More urgent. Unit 14, turn around immediately. Do not stop your vehicle. Do not exit your vehicle. Turn around immediately. My pulse hammered. I was already driving away. What the hell did they mean turn around? Then the realization hit me slowly, like ice water pouring down my spine. They didn't mean reverse direction. They meant leave. Get off the road entirely. Behind me, headlights flickered. The sedan was moving now. Not driving. Gliding. No engine noise. No tire sound. It simply drifted forward through the darkness, staying perfectly centered in the lane. And the figure inside still hadn't moved. My breathing turned shallow. Every instinct screamed that something was deeply wrong with the thing behind that wheel. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The patrol car surged forward, but the sedan stayed the same distance behind me. Not gaining, not falling back, just following. The radio crackled again. This time there were other sounds beneath the dispatcher's voice. Murmuring, like several people whispering over each other. Don't stop. Keep driving. It sees you. My stomach twisted. Then through the static, the dispatcher suddenly shouted, "Whatever you do, don't pull over." The radio died completely after that. No static. No signal. Nothing. Just silence. Ahead of me, the road stretched endlessly through black forest. No signs. No exits. No mile markers. Nothing familiar. That's when I finally understood why officers disappeared out here. The road wasn't empty. It never had been. Something used it. Something that waited for drivers. Something that copied stranded cars and helpless people because it understood exactly what would make someone stop. A broken down vehicle. A person needing help. That's what patrol officers are trained to respond to. And suddenly, every abandoned car report I'd ever heard about made horrifying sense. The thing behind me wasn't hunting people. It was baiting them. The sedan's headlights brightened suddenly in my mirror. Close now. Far too close. And for the first time, the figure inside slowly turned its head toward me. I didn't slow down after that. I couldn't. The sedan stayed behind me like it was welded to the darkness itself, its headlights fixed in my mirror with an unnatural patience. No acceleration. No sound. Just presence. Like something that had decided I belonged to it now. Eventually, the forest began to thin. The road ahead looked almost normal again. Almost. That word kept repeating in my head. Almost. Because I knew better now than to trust anything that looked familiar out here. I pushed harder on the gas anyway. Not because I believed I could outrun it, but because stopping was worse. Way worse. The radio remained dead. No static, no dispatcher, just a hollow silence where instructions used to be. Like the entire system had stepped back and decided I was no longer part of it. When I finally got back within range of the main highway, I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. Even before I saw the station lights in the distance, I already knew the department would be waiting. They always were. Not physically, but in the way everything felt prepared. Like they already knew what I was about to say. The garage doors were open when I pulled in. 2 officers stood near the entrance. Neither moved when I parked. Neither asked if I was okay. That was the first thing that told me something was deeply wrong. Normally, after a patrol shift, especially a call that went quiet like mine, there are questions, reports, confusion. But this time there was nothing. Just waiting. Harlan was there too. He didn't look surprised to see me alive. That bothered me more than anything I had experienced on that road. They guided me inside without speaking much. The station felt different at night. Quieter than usual. Not peaceful. Controlled. Like sound itself had been turned down. I didn't even sit before I started talking. There was something behind me, I said immediately. It wasn't another driver, it was copying things. The car, it moved without moving. No one interrupted me. That was worse than disbelief. It was recognition. Like I was finally saying the correct version of something they had already heard too many times. One of the supervisors finally spoke. Carefully. Measured. "We know," he said. I froze. "You know," I repeated. He nodded once. Not comfortably. Not casually. Like admitting it cost something. "We've seen it on dash cams," he said. "We've recovered vehicles that shouldn't have been where they were. We've had officers report the same encounter." I felt my throat tighten. "Then why is it still open?" Harlan exhaled slowly. "That road isn't open," he said. "It just exists." Nobody reacted to that sentence. Like it was already part of the department's vocabulary. Something too old to argue with. Too dangerous to define properly. I leaned forward. "So what is it?" I asked. "A gas leak, a construction mistake, a missing stretch of highway?" The supervisor shook his head. "No. Just that. No explanation. No theory. No comfort." Then he added something quieter. "Sometimes it's a straight road," he said. "Sometimes it loops drivers back to the beginning. Sometimes it doesn't let them leave at all." I stared at him. "Then what do you do when officers get trapped?" Silence spread through the room. Not hesitation. Avoidance. Finally, Harlan spoke. "We don't send anyone after them." My stomach dropped. "You just leave them." "We don't know where them is anymore," he said quietly. That was the moment everything inside me went cold. Because I realized what he was really saying. The department wasn't ignoring the problem. They were surviving it. By refusing to acknowledge it too directly. By cutting the connection the moment it started to pull back. I thought about the sedan again. About how it had followed me without moving. About how dispatch had sounded like a recording, replaying the same instruction over and over. Then I asked the question I didn't want to ask. What happens to the drivers who don't turn around in time? No one answered. Not because they didn't know, but because answering, it meant admitting the road didn't just take people. It kept them. I didn't talk about old Highway 47 after that night. Not officially. Not on reports. Not in passing conversations at the station. Because there are some things in this job that don't stay contained once you give them words. They spread, like something listening for attention. And the road, whatever it is, feels exactly like that. But I'm telling you now because I don't think I have a choice anymore. Because if you're hearing this, then you've probably driven on highways like the one I'm describing. Long rural stretches, empty roads that feel too quiet. The kind where your headlights are the only proof that anything exists at all. People think those roads are safe because they're familiar. Because asphalt is asphalt. Because lines on pavement are supposed to mean control. But that isn't always true. Some roads don't behave like roads. They don't follow distance. They don't follow direction. And they definitely don't care what your GPS says. I've seen what happens when officers ignore that. I've seen what's left of patrol logic when something starts copying reality, just well enough to lure you closer. So listen carefully. If you ever see an abandoned vehicle on a rural highway at night, and something feels off about it, if there's no driver nearby, if the engine is warm when it shouldn't be, don't assume it's an accident. Don't assume it's your job. And don't assume you're the first one there. Because sometimes that's exactly what it wants you to think. And sometimes the safest thing you can do is the one thing we're trained never to do. Leave it. Keep driving. Don't slow down. Don't investigate. Don't stop. Because once you do, you're not responding to a call anymore. You're answering one. And some calls don't come from dispatch. They come from the road itself. So if you're ever driving late at night and you see a road your GPS doesn't recognize, do what dispatch told me to do. Turn around.